Today I'm craving steak, but I don't enjoy grilling in the cold, so I'll solve this problem like I do with many of mine. Top it with cheese and stuff it in bread. To the kitchen. Alrighty, we're gonna make some homemade bread. This is kind of an Italian loaf here, so I will start with my water, give it its yeast. I'm going with instant yeast, a little bit of sugar to snack on, give that a quick stir. We'll let that sit for about 5 minutes just to get a little bit of a bloom going. Even with instant yeast, I just like to give it a good 5 minutes. Then I will throw in a little bit of olive oil, and then we can get in our dry ingredients. I'll throw in half of my flour, start mixing this. It should only take a couple minutes to get to this kind of shaggy looking dough. Then I will throw in my salt and the rest of my flour, give this a good mix, and Bob's your uncle, you will have this nice loose shaggier dough, but we want to tighten it up, so we will get out onto our work surface to start kneading it. For dough this size, I mean, this is going to make one big loaf or a couple small loaves, however you want to do it, but it really won't take too long, about 5 or 6 minutes of kneading it to really just develop that gluten. Once you have a nice shaped ball like this, then we'll get a clean bowl and grease it with a little bit of olive oil. We want to let our dough ball proof so it gets nice and puffy, but we don't want it to stick to the side, so make sure that you grease your bowl very nicely. Cover it with a towel. We're going to let this proof for about an hour. After an hour, it should rise about double, and it will be this nice, puffy, lovely delight that you see in front of you. Then we just want to give it a poke with our fingers to let some of that excess air out, get it onto our work surface that we have lightly floured, and you can go with whatever shape that you want. I want one huge, long loaf, so I'm going to first kind of roll it into a ball, get it into this nice shape to work with. Again, because I want one big old loaf, I'm not going to cut it, but here's where you can cut it into a few smaller loaves or any kind of shapes that you're going for. Then I'm just going to kind of play around with it. It's like clay at this point. I mean, it's super moldable, super malleable, so I'm just going to roll it in between my fingers and on my work surface to get into this nice, long, elongated shape that I'm happy with. I'll get some parchment paper into this just so it doesn't stick to my work surface, and I'll cover it with my towel one more time. We're going to let it proof for another half hour just to give it another chance to get super nice and puffy and rest before baking. You can see here it almost doubles in size again, gets really nice and super puffy. You can go with it just like this. I personally like to put these slits into it. You don't have to cut too deep. I find a serrated knife works best for this, and just get my nice little slits because I like the way that looks when it finishes baking, for which I will grab my trusted pizza stone that I love to bake everything on. It's been in the oven preheating at 400. I will also add a little bit of cornmeal on the bottom. Not completely necessary. I just like that little bit of ground cornmeal on the bottom of this kind of bread. You may have to reshape a little bit onto your hot pizza stone, but then get it into the 400-degree oven. I do a water bath here, just a little bit of water to steam under the bread while it bakes. It really keeps it nice and moist, but gives it a nice crust on the outside. After about 20 to 25 minutes, depending on your oven, you should have a beauty similar to this. If your bread isn't sticking and your kitchen smells amazing, you did it right. This came out really nice, but I like a little bit more color on it, so I like to just hit it with a little bit of oil spray after it comes out, and you can rub a little bit of butter on it, whatever you like. You gotta let that cool for a little bit, but then you'll have this nice golden beauty perfection like this. It has so much texture and nice and crispy on the outside. It's firm enough to hold up to whatever we stuff inside of it. The inside is so nice and soft and delicate, and it has a ton of flavor, so I'm just gonna cut into it the long way, but keeping it together because I like it to stay attached. The contrast of the crispy outside to the super soft inside is what's gonna give us a perfect sandwich. I know some people like to take out some of the inside of this bread, to which I say, are you insane? So I will not be doing that. And now it is time to talk steak. This is a beautiful ribeye. I mean, you can use a lot of different cuts. I think ribeye is probably best for this. You could use a flank steak or something else that's tender, but I'm going to take this perfect ribeye and just slice it really super thin by hand with a really sharp knife. Maybe you want to do more of a chop steak thing and chop it up super small, but for me, I want really nice, long, thin strips cutting against the grain, of course. Once you have them all stripped, this is what we're looking for. And you can see, I mean, that perfect marbling, right? That little bit of fat running throughout the meat. It's exactly what we're going for. It's so tender. It's so flavorful. So I really don't want to add too much to this. I mean, you can marinate or do different things with it. Because it's such a high quality meat, I'm just doing salt and pepper. Give that a good mix. We're going to get into a super hot pan. We just want to give it a quick sear. It's really not going to take long at all. So get your pan super hot. Just a little bit of olive oil is all we're going to need. Spread it out nice and thin so everybody has their room to get seared. And this should be super quick with it, just as thin as they are in such a high quality meat. Just a quick sear on each side, and then you want to get it out of your pan. But to that pan, we're going to get some veggies going. I like mushrooms, so I'll throw those in there, and I also like onions and peppers, so why not? Hey, that looks kind of cool. But to that same pan with all that flavor, we're going to start with our mushrooms, and I'm just going to throw them in dry for now because there's so much moisture in mushrooms, and I'm just going to want them to sweat out. No oil yet. As they cook down and get about halfway through, then I'll get in some oil, season them with salt and pepper. Time for our onions and peppers to join the party. I'll get those in the pan, give them a good mix, stir them up. Then I'll create a well right in the middle because I have a garlic obsession that I need to meet, so I'll throw a big fat tablespoon in there. Give these a good mix, season with salt and pepper, and just cook these down. It may take a little while. There's no rush with this. You just want to get them nice and cooked down until it smells like outside of a ballpark. And it is time to make a sandwich, so I will get our bread onto a baking sheet lined with parchment. I will stack our steak into this nice and high. I'm really chocolate this bad boy full of steak because that is the whole point. Then I will get our veggies right on top, and now I'm going to go with some cheese. And I mean, I love Philly cheesesteaks, but this is not that. This is really highlighting the steak. If you wanted to do that, you could have melted the cheese in the pan, mix everything together, and toast toast it just like this, but I'm just gonna throw a little bit of provolone because I really want my steak to be the highlight of this dish. But after a few minutes under a broiler in a very hot oven, you can see we have some nice bubbly cheese, some crispy toasted bread. Everything is hot and warm through, and this is what I'm going for, right? That crispy bread on the outside, super tender meat with the veggies and the melted cheese in the middle. And this is a huge sandwich. I mean, this is not meant for one unless you're like a competitive eater, then more power to you. So I'm gonna slice this up. This is almost more like a party sub that could feed a whole crowd. But again, the choice is yours. Opportunity to make smaller sandwiches or a big old fat one like I did here, but you can get creative with it and do whatever meets your needs. So I'm gonna slice this down even one more time. So this is a quarter of the entire sandwich, and this is still pretty big, but this is a great shot at everything that we have going on here. That steak is cooked perfectly. It has so much flavor. That's why I use the ribeye, because it's just so perfect for this. The veggies complement it greatly. The cheese is just a nice finishing touch, and the bread is the perfect canvas for this. And that is what I call a sandwich.